In the light of a recent transfer in League of Legends, I'm reminded of the topic of loyalty in esports and how it's often applied. It's nearly always invoked in the context of an organization having a player leave who's a talented player who's going to a different organization or a better organization in terms of what they can offer him or the potential success he gets there. And so it tends to be invoked by the organization or by players within the organization to kind of like shame that player and imply like you should have stayed with us. And so what they do is they mix in a business decision in what I think is quite a dirty, disingenuous manner with like emotional components and the idea of friendship and brotherhood, and this is loyalty and this is what's needed. And there's two examples I'm going to give you, one from League of Legends and one from CSGO, and I'm going to explain why I think this is a very dangerous precedent to allow to exist and why I don't think anyone should allow people to convince them that this is the case without thinking it through. So in League of Legends, the case is Sven and Mithy, the AD carry and support players of Origin, left to go and join Gamers 2. Well, they're actually called G2 now. Now, Origin had finished second to G2 in the LCS split. G2 is the champions of Europe. G2 is a team which is one of the only teams that Sven and Mithy could go to and could consider that team an upgrade for them. Supposedly, one of the reasons they left is they didn't think that the Origin players practiced as much as they want or weren't as dedicated and as hungry as them. Certainly seems to be the case from the way the split played out. And so they went to a team they thought had young, hungry players in who were some of the best at their positions, got the chance to succeed, and this is going to be a good move for everyone. Now, here's the thing. Sven and Mithy were not poached. That hasn't been claimed by Origin. Origin's attempted to make no case to Riot to say these players were poached and they should be banned or whatever. They didn't break their contracts. They're in a position where they can go and make this move. So what's the problem here? But what happens is players bring up the notion of loyalty, and we were friends, and we accomplished something together. Now let's go over to the CSGO example. So the French organisation LDLC in 2014 had built up a second best French team and managed to have some good results. They won DreamHack Valencia, which was like a smaller LAN. They'd managed to finish top 4 at ESL1 Cologne, and were actually quite close to making the final there, taking the eventual champions in IP to 3 maps. And in the French shuffle that happened in the late summer, they basically initially lost some of their best players and the team got stripped of players and it looked like they were going to be the organization left out, just screwed. And what happened is a couple of players, so they had 3, Kaylee, Apex and Maniac left the team, went over to join Titan, who at the time was the best French org, and it just left Happy and Uzi in the team, and then that team was done essentially. And so initially when this move happened, the org came out and complained and said about how disloyal these players were and how they'd been building something up and how the whole reason they'd invested into these players was to allow them something bigger in the future and all the rest of it, even though it's not like they'd given them more salary than everyone else and better contracts than everyone else. No, they were entirely within their rights to leave at that point in time. But they essentially kept they besmirched the reputations of these players. They implied they were disloyal and that they'd done something terrible to them and they hadn't sort of kept their end of an agreement, even though that's not the case to what happened. Now, the irony in the LDLC case is when the French shuffle all settled down, they were able to get a team of players who left Titan and another org, Epsilon, and they ended up with the best French team. In fact, they ended up with a team much better than their old LDLC team. They ended up with a team that went on to be one of the best 5-man lineups in the history of CSGO and won the next major. And yet these people had complained and said loyalty. What's funny is they benefited from this lack of loyalty in their world in that sense. And from players not being loyal to other organisations. NBK leaving Titan. Or is he disloyal, is he, by leaving Titan and coming and joining your org after all they've invested in him and built with him and built brotherhood and friendship? No, unsurprisingly, they didn't hear a peep from them in that moment. Suddenly they shut the fuck up and just enjoyed the success, didn't they? So the point I'm going to make is, I think these sorts of ideas, when you bring them into a business world, these kind of ideas, especially when they're nearly always applied from the top down, from the organization down to the player, the person who has the least rights, the least resources, etc. This is and it's essentially just the fodder, the chattel that's out there working to build the reps of these orgs. And these orgs will survive maybe a decade more. That player's career might be 2 more years, and they're making demands on him. Despite that, they might not even be able to match the contracts of other people. The problem with these ideas is they make slaves of the people who are the players if they buy into this notion. There's a great saying of the notion of believing in things unwaveringly and not being able to change your mind and not just using them for what they're worth and then getting rid of them when they're not worth anything. It says convictions make us convicts. And I really think this is the case here. So let me break it down for you. So organizations demand loyalty and yet they don't reciprocate loyalty in the exact same manner the other way from their end. So think about this. They make the suggestion that, oh, we made you as a player because, you had the success in our team and that's why this other team wants you. So essentially we played a part in it. We invested in you. Why aren't we getting the benefit of our investment? Whoa. Yeah, you invested salary and you give this person an opportunity. What did they then do with that opportunity? Well, the reason why someone else wants them is they took that salary and they provided you world-class play in exchange for it. They took the opportunity and they put your team and elevated them to a level like Origin to make you second in the split to where now someone else wants to sign them. You got an equal trade there. You invested the money, you gave the salary, the player gave you his play, contract ends, that's it. You now have to get a new contract if you want that player to play for you again. That's it. There's no investment process here. It wasn't, remember, it wasn't an investment. The player didn't get anything out of it beyond just his salary. He got his salary for a day's work. He did his day's work. The day ends. You pay him for the next day. And then as soon as the contract ends, there's no more day's work to be done. His part's done, just as you don't pay him any money beyond that contract. Now, if you want him to be loyal to your organization, give him equity in your organization. Then he's investing something himself. He's investing his time and effort, knowing that in the long run, he's going to get money out of your org and have a controlling shares and have some sort of residual income. Just likewise, like you're going to say, well, I've invested a lot in you and I've given you the equity, so you've got to stay with me through the hard times, and even if you get better off, that would make sense. That would be some sort of commensurate compensation in that scenario, right? This doesn't happen. Also, let's consider this. As I said, the players put you in that position. Yeah, you gave them the opportunity initially, but what happens if those players, when you give them the opportunity in the salary, come in and are terrible? Well, then your org falls down. Maybe you don't get the same budgets next year and salaries and all the rest of it. So they kept you where you were, or they pushed you to a higher level with their play. So consider what they've made of you. You didn't just make them by playing them. They have to play in the server, mate. Then you've got to consider this. Sometimes players get demands made of them that are totally unreasonable in a way that is never reciprocated by the org. So think of this. I've had this happen myself. So there are players who the salary, the sponsors hasn't paid this month, and we've got some problems coming in, guys. We need to have to delay your salary for like a month or 2 weeks or something. In that scenario, the player isn't allowed to go public with that information. The player isn't allowed to say, I'm not, tools down, I don't play until I get my salary. He has to just play and hope that the org helps him out in that manner. Imagine the other way around. Imagine the org comes to the player and he says, I haven't got the money to play. And the player goes, all right, well, you know what? I just won't play in the next 5 games then until you pay me. That would be considered scandalous. That would be outrageous. People would call this unprofessional. Other orgs would bully you and say, oh, you can't do that. Everyone, we're all in this together and all that. And yet they don't work the other way around. It's ridiculous. Then you've got to consider players have a short career spans in esports. So if they like this team and they want to play this team and think they have a chance to win, okay, that's a reason where they might want to stay. But if they get a better offer, they get a higher salary offer, especially one that comes with the chance to win, and they get a chance to play with players they think are more in line with their values, they've got to take it in most scenarios, especially if they want to. If it's their natural inclination, if they feel some calling to do so. I mean, in that scenario, that's entirely reasonable, especially in a game like League of Legends. In League of Legends, your career as a top pro could be 1 year. Because it could be a couple of meta shifts. Or it might be a year where you succeed enough where people have enough faith in you that you're on this team, and then if you get kicked out of that team when you perform badly, you have the man cloud shit happen to you where you drop down and then you don't do well at that level, you drop down more, you don't do well at that level, drop down more, and you're nobody. 2 years later, you're fucking nobody. And yet you were supposed to be loyal to that team and not go to CLG and not go to these other top orgs that would have offered you more money and stability and built a team around you. Now you're supposed to be loyal to them, right? I mean, in the NBA and NFL, yeah, you have a 15-year career if you're a great player. In League of Legends, you might have 3 years, even if you're a truly great, all-time amazing player. So you have to make those choices, especially when you're talking about signing 1-year contracts. You have to be willing to make those hard choices if you need to. And so trying to bully people or trying to play on their emotions by telling them, suggesting they're not loyal, or say, oh, you are loyal, yeah, of course, well, then you'll be going to re-up with us, right? That's dirty. That's not the way business should work. So there's an example given. This is a great point that I can springboard off. Where Aranea, who's obviously been a long-time friend of the guys who used to be in Fnatic, so has Nick Specke, and he's always been around those teams, Origin, Fnatic, he made a post where he tweeted out a picture from the player Fernando Totti, who was one of the great Italian centre-forwards, attacker players, and he played for Roma famously, and he played in the World Cup with Italy. And this guy wasn't like the best forward, but he was an above-average forward in Serie A. He was a good forward in certain seasons, very good, very skilled player. And so in this quote, okay, someone asks him why he didn't join Real Madrid when he had the chance, because Real Madrid famously nearly always have the most money and they can afford to spend above the odds to get you to come. As long as you want to come, they can make the number high enough that your team will let you come because of the money. So what he says in this quote, Fernando Totti, is he says, "They taught us at school that family is the most important thing for a human. Roma is my family," the team he played for, the Rome. "Have you ever heard of someone who left his poor parents to live with rich strangers?" Now, here's the problem with that scenario. That almost has something to it. Like, you follow it through, and if you only think about it that way he mentioned it and don't break it down, you'll be like, yeah, there is sort of something to that. If it is like, if I accept his premise that family is the most important thing, that's premise one, and that Rome is his family, then yeah, it would be crazy for someone to leave their family to go and live with rich strangers. The problem with all that is, as I mentioned before, let's attack the premises, see where that ends. So, if family's the most important thing, not money and not success, and if Rome is his family, and therefore they put loyalty and being family above success and money, let me ask you this. What would have happened if Totti had become bad at the game? If he'd have dropped off, if an injury had made him a lesser player, and he could still play, but he wasn't good enough, and the team wasn't having success, would they say, you know what, Totti, doesn't matter, you can stay in the team forever, mate. We'll keep paying you the same salary, we'll keep you in the team, don't worry, family is the most important thing above money and success. No, of course not. In that scenario, orgs will not keep players who become crap at the game, who start to underperform habitually, who bring the team down from the level the team otherwise could be at with that money and that salary, etc. Doesn't matter if they actually like them and they feel like their family. They will make the business decision, they will make the hard decision, and they will do that almost every single time. So let me put it this way, in the Totti wording, I'll phrase it the same way to show you how illogical this statement is if you actually consider how most people behave. Have you ever heard of some parents whose son underperformed and didn't live up to their expectations, so they kicked him out the house and just hired a talented stranger who was a really nice guy and really friendly and could hang around the house? Have you ever heard of that happening? No, I haven't heard of that either, Totti. So it feels like your analogy's fallen apart there, mate. It feels like you made a point. Wasn't a very salient point though, was it? So as a result, this is about business. This isn't about family. It'd be nice if we can all be friendly and enjoy each other's company and build close relationships while it makes sense to from a business standpoint. But in my opinion, the only time a player should ever feel any compulsion to loyalty, etc., is if that kind of relationship has legitimately been structured like that and has been forged, and there's been considerations and things given up, sacrifices made by both sides. So, for example, the Lakers, when Kobe Bryant was in his physical peak in the NBA, 2006 to 2008, were actually a team that until the latter half of the 2008 split season weren't in a position to be champions. They weren't even in a position to make it deep in the playoffs. They were barely making the playoffs. So as a result, he wanted to leave when his contract was up after 2007, and he was talking about it, and he was saying, I want to be traded. Well, his contract wasn't quite up then. He said, I want to be traded. I want you guys to look into getting, because they hadn't got the players around him to make his team good enough. So he's wasting the prime of his career. Now, he stuck with it, and he'd give them a little bit more time because they went, we just need a little bit more time. And then they got a player in Pau Gasol who started to turn the franchise around. They made piece after piece trades. Then they did get a world champion eventually. So as a result, at the end of his career, when Kobe was all busted up and he'd come back from injuries, two injuries, and his body wasn't even vaguely close to being able to hold up like it did before. His level had dropped up a whole fuck ton in those last 2 seasons. He had to miss a bunch of games with injuries. The Lakers said, you know what, loyalty. That you are loyal to us all this time, we're going to be loyal to you. And they not only gave him a good contract and kept him on the team, but they gave him a max contract for those last 2 years to make up for the years when he couldn't get max because they had Shaquille O'Neal and other situations like that. So they fulfilled their end of the loyalty aspect because he'd fulfilled his, but it was always an understanding between them in that particular sense. And it made business sense as well in that case because he was worth more than just his salary in terms of being able to pack the stadium out. Like, I think if he was somebody who didn't draw numbers and all the rest of it, I don't think they would have been as loyal in that sense. So to me, it's kind of dirty the way this whole loyalty thing's used in the Sven and Mithy case and in the LDLC case. And I notice it's nearly always either organizations trying to punish players and make their rep seem like shit, or players who are stuck in the same team and they're just mad that a teammate left to a better situation than them trying to fuck with that guy. I think that's kind of dirty myself. There should be no loyalty in that particular sense. That's not a very reasonable way to look at the world we live in this business of esports.